Jack trudged down the street towards Dean's house, a worn gym bag slung over his shoulder. As he approached, he could see Chris's house next door and hear distant sounds of conversation drifting from one of the backyards. Ignoring their street, Jack continued on to the next one and found the house situated behind Dean's. Initially, he considered sneaking into the backyard of the house across from Chris's, but decided against it and instead opted to ring the doorbell and ask for permission. He paused as his hand hovered over the doorbell, taking in his surroundings. The wind rustled through the trees and swept over him, causing his dark gray shirt to ripple beneath his hands. Finally, he pressed the button and waited. To his surprise, the door opened to reveal a young girl with brown hair and piercing green eyes. She looked confused at first before recognition crossed her features. "Jack?" she asked, tucking a lock of hair behind her freckle-speckled ear. "What are you doing here?" Jack let out a soft laugh. "It's a funny story," he began, still unsure if he was remembering her name correctly. "You're Candace, right?" Candace nodded slowly, her brow furrowing in confusion as she searched Jack's face. "I needed to talk to you about your neighbors," Jack explained. "Chris and Dean." A deep sigh escaped Candace's lips as she crossed her arms over her chest. "Are you hanging out with them?" she asked in a monotone voice. Jack quickly shook his head. No, it's not like that at all." He pleaded with her, hoping she would give him a chance to explain. Candace rolled her eyes and retreated back into the house. "I already told them I won't go swimming with them," she declared firmly. Desperation flooded through Jack as he took a step forward. "Please, just hear me out," he pleaded, pressing his hands together in a begging gesture. "You have 1 minute to explain why you're associated with those two dorks," Candace said, crossing her arms and narrowing her eyes at Jack. "Do you know Keith?" Jack asked, his voice calm despite the accusatory tone of Candace's question. "Yeah, the kid you always hang out with in school, the one who's dating Angelica," Candace confirmed with a slight nod. Jack gave a half nod, his expression pained. "Well, he's not dating Angelica anymore. He found out she's been cheating on him with Chris and Dean." Candace shook her head in disbelief, her eyes wide with shock. "If she's been cheating on both of them at the same time, maybe it'll finally get Chris and Dean to stop being friends," she muttered under her breath, clearly exhausted from dealing with the constant drama caused by the troublesome trio. Jack nodded in agreement, his expression serious. "Actually, she's officially dating both of them now. Keith broke up with her and she wasted no time making things official." Candace swung open the door, a knowing grin on her face as she squinted against the darkness of the night. "Let me get this straight," she said as Jack stepped inside. "Angelica is simultaneously dating Chris and Dean?" "Yeah, you got it, at the same damn time," Jack confirmed. Candace raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Okay, and what does this have to do with your unexpected visit?" "Well, Keith was invited over to a pool party at Dean's house, just past your privacy fence, and he brought his sister along for a swim." Jack paused as Candace gasped in surprise. Wait, she held up a hand. "You're telling me Keith has a sister?" "Yep, he sure does now," Jack confirmed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Candace rolled her eyes in disbelief. "Go on!" While Jack continued his story about the wild pool party next door that involved skinny dipping and Keith's supposed sister, Candace couldn't help but feel like her brain was about to explode. She waved her hands between their faces in an attempt to clear her mind before looking back at Jack with a disbelieving expression. "First off," she stated firmly, eyebrows furrowed in confusion, "Keith doesn't have a sister." Jack's voice was drowning in the uproar of laughter as Candace interrupted him yet again. Her bright red nails tapped impatiently against her palm, signaling for a break in the chaos. "Time out!" she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the noise like a sharp knife. "Let me get this straight," she continued, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Keith just dumped Angelica because he found out she was cheating on him with not one but two other guys. And then his next move is to go skinny dipping with them?" She nodded slowly, trying to make sense of it all. "Oh, and let's not forget that Angelica was there too," Jack added, as if it made the situation any less ludicrous. "Naturally," Candace replied sarcastically, rolling her eyes. "Because what better way to handle being cheated on than getting naked with your ex-girlfriend and the guys she slept with behind your back?" She shook her head in disbelief. "And there's more," Jack insisted, trying to defend his friend's actions. Candace scoffed, her head still shaking slowly from side to side, like how he also ended up getting naked with his sister who randomly showed up out of nowhere. Just another normal day in Keith's life. Okay, so my friend Keith is... Jack attempted to continue with his story about his friend Keith, but Candace couldn't help but interject. An idiot, Candace said. My idiot friend Keith, Jack restated. Candace nodded appreciatively. Better. Jack stood in front of Candace's doorstep, his hands gesturing wildly as he recounted the story. His words tumbled out in a rush, eager to be heard. The orange light from her porch cast shadows across his face, giving him an almost ethereal appearance. Decided he wanted to mend his friendship despite what they did to him, Jack explained, and they invited him to that pool party. Yeah, he brought his sister along. She's adopted, so it's not that freaky. Candace leaned against the doorway, her fingers curling in the air as if urging him to continue. He went to the party, Jack continued. But apparently Dean knew that his parents were coming home. While they were pretending to play a game, seeing how long they could hold their breath underwater, Dean, Chris, and Angelica snuck over to Chris's house and locked the pool gate on them. They even threw Keith and his sister's clothes over the fence. He pointed behind Candace's shoulder. Your backyard. Candace couldn't help but let out a chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Her grin widened as she asked, How did you find out about this? They showed up at my door and told me all about it, Jack replied with a shrug. Wait a minute, Candace said with a laugh. If their clothes are in my backyard, how did they end up at your front door? Naked, Jack said with a mischievous glint in his eye. Keith and his sister are complete fools, Candace stated matter-of-factly, her tone filled with disdain. She motioned for Jack to come inside, her hand gesturing towards the open door. As he stepped into the house, Jack couldn't help but notice the quietness that enveloped him. It was clear that Candace was the only one home. The living room was meticulously organized, with neatly arranged furniture and a distinct lack of personal items. Candace led Jack through the living room and into the backyard through a sliding glass door. The vibrant green grass stretched out before them, interrupted only by 4 colorful towels strewn about haphazardly. 2 pairs of pants lay nearby, each with their shoes tied through the belt loops as if they were ready for a quick getaway. A pair of boxers and panties lay intertwined on top of one another, while 3 t-shirts completed the messy scene. Candace picked up one of the shirts and inspected it curiously. The logo reading No Balance made her lips twitch in amusement. Jack's eyes wandered around the yard until they landed on an unexpected sight, a crossbow lying abandoned on the patio table. Without thinking, he reached down and picked it up, admiring its craftsmanship before Candace's warning voice snapped him back to reality. Her hand gently removed the crossbow from his grasp and placed it back onto the table, emphasizing her words with a stern look. Well, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, Candace remarked as she gathered up the scattered clothes and brought them over to the table. And it all turned out to be true, Jack. Your best friend actually is an idiot. What's the crossbow for? Jack asked, his eyes flickering with curiosity. Candace smirked and gestured to a foam target leaning against a tree in her backyard. Target practice, she replied nonchalantly. As they walked towards the adjacent privacy fence, they could hear raucous laughter coming from Chris's house next door. 2 male voices and 1 female voice mingled together in a symphony of merriment. Looks like they're still over there, Jack muttered. Yeah, they're always back there making noise and laughing about something, Candace said, shrugging it off. I'd love to catch them on tape talking about this, Jack mused. Tape? What do you think this is, the 90s? Candace rolled her eyes playfully as they neared the fence to eavesdrop. With a mischievous glint in her eye, Candace disappeared for a few moments before returning with a digital recorder, duct tape, and a thin piece of string that Jack could barely see. What are you doing? He asked, watching curiously as she duct taped the digital recorder to one of the crossbow arrows and tied a string to the back feathers. No time to explain, just trust me, Candace replied confidently. She loaded the modified arrow into the crossbow and took aim at a tree in Chris's backyard. Oh yeah, right, Jack scoffed. Candace shrugged and took aim. What do I get if you actually hit it? Jack paused, pretending to consider her question. My undying respect and an invitation to my pool party tonight. Is it clothed or unclothed? She added teasingly. Jack grinned. Well, Keith and his sister are there right now waiting for their clothes. His words were cut off as Candace released the arrow with precision, and it landed directly in the tree, eliciting a satisfying thud. The sudden sound of Dean's voice jolted the group, causing them to jump in surprise. What was that? He exclaimed, his voice echoing through the stillness of the surrounding woods. Shut the fuck up, it's just a damned squirrel. Angelica's voice carried through the layers of backyard privacy fences, her words dripping with annoyance as she yelled back loud enough for Candace and Jack to hear. Candace quietly giggled just low enough for the kids on the other side of the fence to not hear or notice, breaking the tension with her playful tone. "So, another naked pool party. I'm in," she joked, gesturing towards the towels they had brought along with them. "Good thing you brought 4 towels. Let's roll." Jack couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "What about the recorder?" he asked, curious about their plan for documenting their adventure. Candace nonchalantly shrugged her shoulders, implying that it wasn't something to worry about. "It's just a digital voice recorder, not a time machine," she reassured him. "Let it run while we go have some fun. I'll retrieve it from the tree with a string when I get back and upload the file to my computer. Then I can share it with you through my cloud drive." "Nice." Jack nodded approvingly, impressed by Candace's quick thinking and resourcefulness. This was going to be an unforgettable experience indeed. Keith's breath caught in his throat as Nettie poured alcohol onto his feet, the cool liquid stinging against his scratches and cuts. They had just finished rinsing off the dirt they acquired during their wild sprint through the dense woods, taking turns in Jack's shower to clean up. As Keith looked down at his feet, he noticed how battered and bruised they were from the rough terrain. But when he pointed out Nettie's own injuries, she simply brushed them off, her hydrogel skin already beginning to heal itself. The sound of his father's video game could be heard faintly over the running water, and Nettie's gentle voice as they tended to each other's wounds. Suddenly the front door creaked open and closed, signaling Jack's return. "Keith," Jack's voice echoed through the house as he called for his friend. "I brought my +1 for the pool party. We found your clothes and both your cell phones." When Keith saw Candace step into the room, he quickly wrapped a towel around his waist, trying to hide his nakedness. Jack noticed that Nettie and Keith had taken 2 of his towels from the bathroom while they were tending to each other's injuries. "What the hell, guys?" Jack exclaimed. "You ran over here naked and now you're using my towels as clothes? These are mine now. You can have those." He stuffed 2 towels back into the drawer. "Candace?" Keith couldn't believe she was there with them. Candace stood with her hands on her hips, watching as the young girl gently tended to Keith's foot wounds with a paper towel. "That's my name," Candace replied nonchalantly. "Don't wear it out." She looked at their nearly naked bodies with little concern. "Are you 2 going to be okay to swim tonight, or are you going to bleed out in Jack's pool like that woman from the John Wick movie?" "Do you use chlorine in the pool?" Nettie asked, turning slightly to see Candace and giving her a nod of acknowledgement. "Hello," she added with a warm smile. "I maintain the pool, not my dad," Jack replied. "Oh, we're safe then. I was just worried about Keith getting an infection." Nettie stood up and washed her hands at the sink before shaking Candace's hand. She then reached out to take the gym bag from Jack. Larry looked over at them briefly as they navigated the mess of the house before quickly returning his attention to his video game. "I'm going to tell the new girl the same thing I said to the other 2 lovebirds. No sex in that pool," Larry said with a smirk without taking his eyes off the game. "Promise, Dad," Jack replied with a grin as he opened the back door for his friends. Nettie and Keith were the first ones to step into the pool. Keith felt relieved when he realized that the water was warm and comfortable, a testament to Jack's diligent maintenance routine. As for Nettie, she couldn't resist letting out a content sigh as she submerged herself in the crystal clear water. "You sure you're okay with getting naked? I mean, it's—" Jack began, but was interrupted as Candace confidently stripped down without any hesitation. Jack's eyes widened in amazement as he took in her fit and toned body, hidden under all those baggy clothes she usually wore. And holy shit, okay. He trailed off in awe. Candace climbed up the ladder and gracefully jumped into the pool next to Keith, causing small ripples to radiate through the water. Meanwhile, Nettie couldn't help but smile at Keith's slightly embarrassed reaction as Jack cannonballed into the pool like a meteor. "So, Keith," Candace began, leaning back against the round wall of the above-ground pool and hooking her elbows on the sides. She didn't seem to care that her chest was slightly above the waterline while doing so. "If you were a mouse and I put a piece of cheese on a glowing red mouse trap that you could clearly see, would you really try and take the bait?" With a small laugh, Jack glided effortlessly to the other end of the round pool. Nettie couldn't help but imagine him munching on a big bowl of popcorn as they talked, a new imaginative subroutine she was able to create for herself. Keith shrugged nonchalantly, his minuscule muscles rippling under the water in reaction to the interrogation. Nettie reached out and intertwined her fingers with his, a sense of calm finally settling in, despite Candace's attempts to put Keith on the spot. Her touch sent a gentle wave of warmth through his body. "What do you mean?" Keith asked curiously, his eyes fixed on Nettie's face. Before she could answer, Candace cut in. "Keith has a big—" Nettie started, but was quickly interrupted again by Candace's mischievous grin. "Not really," Candace said playfully, peeking under the water at Keith's lower half. His eyes widened and he instinctively moved his free hand to cover himself. Nettie couldn't help but shake her head and release an exasperated sigh. "He has a big heart, Candace," Nettie clarified, trying not to roll her eyes at her friend's antics. "I was just going along with it because I have a small brain," Candace interjected once again, earning a playful splash from Nettie in response. Jack stayed at a safe distance, still chuckling at the exchange between the group. "Keith may seem a little naive or gullible at times, but he just wants to see the good in people," Jack chimed in, defending his friend. And Nettie was just supporting him. Candace conceded defeat with a shrug. "I can get behind that," she said with a smile. "If we ever play Dungeons and Dragons, I definitely want to be on your team." This elicited another round of laughter from the group, including Keith and Nettie. "So, step-siblings?" Candace asked, her curiosity piqued. "Yeah, adopted," Keith confirmed with a nod. "Just so you know, siblings holding hands underwater is only acceptable in certain parts of the country," Candace joked. "Like the sticks of Louisiana, or northern Kentucky, or Alabama. Any place that could be used as a setting for Sling Blade, with banjos, or Buckingham Palace." Keith desperately tried to pull his hand out of Nettie's grip, but she held on with a strength that surprised him. She even reached over to pull herself closer to him, defying Candace's quip. "We're just close," Nettie insisted. Sure you are," Candace replied with a sly smile. She then pointed to Jack in the pool. "I didn't agree to skinny dip just to have to get a loudspeaker to talk to you. Get your ass over here." Jack swam over, treading water beside Candace as she let go of the edge of the pool and grabbed onto him instead. He found himself holding her by her back shoulders and her knees as she floated in front of him. Jack couldn't help but stare at her naked body in near shock as Candace flashed him a mischievous grin. "I thought I was going to have a boring night at home watching reruns of Blacklist," she said with a laugh. "So thanks for the fun." "Oh, anytime. Thanks for the view," Jack retorted with a smirk. "You're not so bad yourself," Candace replied before turning her attention back to Keith and Nettie. "Listen, guys, if you can admit your love for each other and get it over with, we can all go out and have some real fun later. Otherwise, this whole thing is a complete bust." Jack gasped at Candace's blunt honesty about the tension between Keith and Nettie. He looked beyond her naked body in his arms and at the two siblings. "They're siblings," he whispered incredulously. "Adopted siblings who obviously have some strong feelings for each other," Candace clarified with a shrug. "Come on, guys, just give in to your feelings already. Trust me, it'll be worth it in the end." With that, she turned back to Jack and winked. "I think I'm in love already." Jack couldn't help but laugh at Candace's bold reasoning, feeling a newfound respect for her. "We're related," Keith stated, his voice tinged with both surprise and relief. Candace rolled her eyes in response. "Oh, shut up, guys. It's painfully obvious and it hurts." Nettie couldn't help but let out a giggle as she noticed Keith's blush from the corner of her eye. He quickly averted his gaze, pretending to be interested in a speck of dust on the surface of the water. But then, without hesitation, Keith spoke again. "Yeah, I love her." In that moment, Jack lost his grip on Candace, and she let out a startled scream as she went under for a moment. Jack immediately pulled her back up, grateful that she was smiling instead of angry. Nettie leaned in and planted a sweet kiss on Keith's lips once more, their affection for each other evident in their shared gaze. They both then turned to look at Candace and Jack. "You can't tell anyone," Nettie demanded fiercely. Jack couldn't help but smile in amazement. "Why is that so hot?" he exclaimed before turning towards Candace. "Not as hot as you, of course." Candace playfully smacked Jack before giving him a small peck on the lips in return. The sliding glass door opened once again, breaking the intimate moment between the four friends. No sex in that pool, Larry yelled jokingly from inside the house. Of course not, Dad. Chill. Damn. Jack sighed, rolling his eyes at his father's teasing. Candace playfully suggested, we can have sex in your bed, though, unless you don't want to get too personal on the first date. With a smirk, Jack replied, Hey, I wasn't planning on any intimacy with anyone tonight. I didn't bring what I need to keep you from popping out babies by the end of the school year. His implication was clear. He had not brought condoms. Nodding knowingly, Candace responded, Good point. She then turned to Keith and Nettie and asked, You guys got any? Keith immediately shook his head, while Nettie chimed in with a firm, No. Candace let out a sigh and exclaimed, Not a single Boy Scout in this pool. You guys are supposed to be ready for anything. Jack added with a sly grin, Can't wait to see what's on that recorder. Confused, Keith asked, What recorder? Candace explained with a mischievous glint in her eye, I shot a digital voice recorder into the tree to record your ex and their conversations about what they did to you and your fake sister. We're going to use it to get some dirt on them. I'll share it through my cloud drive. Understanding dawned on Nettie's face as she added, Oh. Candace's voice was hushed as she spoke, her eyes darting around the room to make sure no one was listening. Yeah, she said, her tone serious. So anyway, school starts tomorrow, so we need to work on you two. She pointed a finger between Keith and Nettie. Angelica is going to be digging up all the dirt she can on you in order to fuel her insatiable need for gossip throughout the school year. But with what we're finding out about her and her boyfriends, I think we can shut them up. However, you two need to work on not looking like a married couple, and more like siblings if you want to survive this. How do we do that? Nettie asked, her voice filled with concern. We'll worry about that later, Candace replied, her face stern. For now, just make sure to keep your hips away from each other. You know, the complete opposite of how you two are always clinging onto each other like magnets. Jack nodded in agreement beside her. Also, try to avoid making prolonged eye contact at school, he chimed in. But what about when we're goofing off or having fun? Keith interjected. Well, siblings do that too, Candace said with a smirk. Just try not to look like you're trying to bump pelvises or hold hands or anything like that. Did your mother arrange for a separate bed or sleeping arrangements? It's a 2-bedroom house. People will start to wonder. You'll have to be careful about who you hang out with, both of you. And if anyone goes into your room, they'll have to see that it looks like it's divided up and organized, Jack said. Yeah, Candace nodded, snuggling closer to Jack as they spoke. If people get suspicious, they can look at your room and they'll be able to tell if you live separately. If they see just one bed, no barriers, and 2 big dips in the mattress, they'll definitely start questioning things. Nettie and Keith both nodded. What about now, though? Nettie asked. With us, it's fine. But outside of the pool, my house, or your house, we need to keep any public displays of affection on the down low, Jack said. Wait, does your mom know yet? Jack asked. She figured it out pretty quickly. Nettie shrugged her bony shoulders as she emerged from the water. That's what we need to avoid happening with everyone else. You have to be hyper-aware and cautious, Jack emphasized. And don't go buying condoms either. That's a major red flag, especially when everyone in Pasadena knows you're not seeing anyone else. We'll take care of that for you, Candace chimed in. My mom made me promise not to have sex until he's in college, Nettie revealed. Do you think we can stick to that? Keith asked hopefully. Nettie smiled and shook her head at him before whispering back, There are other things we can do. We'll still get some for you, Candace assured them, just in case you can't resist each other anymore. Keith and Nettie exchanged knowing smiles. Jack and Candace may have known each other's deepest secrets, but they had no idea that Nettie was actually an android. That was their biggest secret of all, and one that Keith vowed to protect at all costs. What's with that look? Candace raised a curious eyebrow. You didn't accidentally get her pregnant, did you? Jack asked in a teasing tone. No, Keith exclaimed, his face flushing with embarrassment. We've never gone that far. And you don't have to get us that stuff because we're not going to do anything like that. Same here, Nettie added, giving Keith a reassuring smile. Well, okay, Candace said with a smirk. Where are we meeting tomorrow? Jack asked eagerly, leaning in towards his friends. Candace nodded and reached out for Nettie and Keith, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. As they were pulled into a huddle, they giggled like children embarking on a secret mission. We need to claim our hangout spot before anyone else does, Jack declared confidently. Candace began ticking off potential locations on her fingers. There's the corner wall between the gym and band class, the curved wall by the doors to the old exit by the bus ramp. Jack chimed in excitedly. And don't forget the dead-end hallway in the sciences lab. Candace grinned. That one's perfect for private chats. But what if someone else has already claimed it? Nettie asked worriedly. Then we'll head to the narrow crevice between the band room and gym, Jack suggested. And if that's taken too, we'll all meet there and search for a new spot together. Understood, Keith said, his voice full of determination. Jack held out his hand, fingers splayed. Nettie's hand landed on top of Jack's, followed by Keith's and then Candace's on the very top. The four of them formed a united front, ready to take on whatever was thrown their way. Go nerds! Candace bellowed, her enthusiasm contagious as they all burst into laughter. No shenanigans in that pool either, Larry hollered from inside the house. Orgies count as sex too. The sliding glass door shut with a soft click behind him, leaving the group alone to revel in their bond and shared sense of humor. We got to find a unique name for this group other than the nerds, Jack exclaimed.